In your view, how much of this has been a really good marketing exercise versus a revolutionary turn-on of some tech?
The rate of AI development is exponentially faster than any other previous emerging tech.
I'm interested to see where the human psychology goes with that. Are people prepared to be accountable for working at super speed?
So what value do I bring to my work if all of the things that I was doing are now being automated? Where does that leave me? It creates anxiety because it's challenging people's perception of value.
Do you get a sense of anti-AI from IT and organisations that are making it really difficult for leadership to progress down this road?
As a society, a greater level of understanding of how these things work. And so we have to innovate at the speed of trust.
Justin, welcome to the SupaHuman podcast. Great to meet you in the flesh.
Absolutely, it's great to be here.
Yeah, I feel
Looking forward to it.
I feel like the amount of times I've met people like face to face over the last maybe year, it's like I feel like I know you because we see each other online all of the time, and we've got a partnership together, and yet we've never actually formally met in person.
That's right.
It's good to have you here.
We've got to announce that.
Yeah, that's right.
We announce it now.
Well, announce it now.
Yeah.
Cool. Go for it. Announce.
Yeah, fantastic to have SupaHuman a part of the AI New Zealand partnership community, and it goes a long way to helping us accelerate the adoption of AI around New Zealand businesses and making that skills and capability and technical knowledge accessible to Kiwi companies.
So why don't we fill everybody in? The market's moving pretty quick and in an exciting way. But this was always going to happen, right? The speed of technology adoption and creation is just exponentially always going to move this way. So we're quite comfortable in this space, but this is quite a challenging time for a lot of businesses that are thinking about AI. But you've been here from what I checked on LinkedIn, 6 years, 1 month, talking about AI.
We founded AI New Zealand in 2017. The rate of AI development is exponentially faster than any other previous emerging tech. I mean, it's astonishing. If we just think back to October 22, when ChatGPT 3.5, launched, the rate of change in the tools and tech and the capability that we have today is just phenomenal. So for anyone, let alone us living in this, all day, every day, for everyone, it's a challenge to keep up with.
And it's interesting because those that have operated within the technology circles and the cloud migration era and before that the on-prem data center era will have gone through, okay, look, none of these technologies are necessarily brand new, but there was such an acceleration of adoption because of almost like a public release of something that really had been kept behind closed doors for so long. In your view, how much of this has been a really good marketing exercise versus a revolutionary turn-on of some tech?
Oh, both. I mean, for the first time, AI has come out of the research labs and into the mainstream. We've got platforms that we can interact with artificial intelligence the way that we interact with each other. We communicate it like we do humans. Like it's a fundamental shift. And so yes, it's a great marketing toy. It makes people curious and interested, but we've got to start thinking about, they're starting to think about, once we get past the, cool, I can write a poem and I can ask it a couple of questions, it's like, well, what do we actually do with this? And do I have to become this thing called a prompt engineer to be able to use it? And so there's that next stage of evolution and adoption now that we're starting to see evolve in terms of the maturity of some of these things.
And it is a fascinating place to be because as a technologist and a guy that's worked in technology businesses, it's been quite binary. It's been like ones and zeros and servers, data centers, and then moving through to now where there's this like meeting of the creative mind of like emotion and interaction with technology, and then actually the abstraction away of all of the tech. I don't think I've seen a scenario where technology has been so talked about yet. The output from it is so emotional and creative. And we're seeing that, well, my feeling is that genuine IT departments and traditional setups of businesses just really, it's bending their minds out of shape because it's not an IT problem, a lot of this adoption. It's a reimagining what a business can be from this stuff.
It creates anxiety because it's challenging people's perception of value. And so when we start talking about how we can automate or augment the tasks you do in your personal life or at work, and AI can do some of that for you, then it challenges people's place in the world. So what value do I bring to my work if all of the things that I was doing are now being automated? Where does that leave me? And so we're starting to see that become a really challenging place around the future of work. How do we build sustainable careers? The whole conversation around universal basic income, like how does that change or evolve humanity and change the way that societies operate? And I think that's probably a whole nother podcast, but there are these conversations now which are coming up in a lot of the conversations we have with different companies around the country.
Funnily enough, that when people go for a job interview and they're sat down with a prospective employer, stereotypically they'd be like, I'm a really productive employee. And now there's this opportunity to be, when we talk about hyper-productivity, there's an opportunity to be hyper-productive and for yourself to create this hyper-productivity. Yet there does seem to be a sense of fear around living up to what you did in the job interview, which was being hyper-productive. It doesn't stop the accountability though. Like, you're still responsible for what leaves your desk. Whether you churn it out in 5 minutes or 5 hours, you're still responsible for it. And I'm interested to see whether human psychology goes with that. Are people prepared to be accountable for working at super speed? Or do they actually really want to work slowly and methodically because of a sense of ownership?
I mean, we kind of segue into generative AI and we think about how content production is becoming automated. So there's this whole idea around the value of creative. And agencies have predominantly, their business model is around charging for time and materials to produce brand and marketing content or written material that can now, in a customer's eyes, be done in a heartbeat because they can use ChatGPT to do something. Now, there's going to be quality issues around it, and there's always got to be a human in a loop and those sorts of things. But the value perception around content production is changing. Alongside that, we're seeing new agencies like Brand IQ with Steve Ballantyne, who are using Midjourney to create magazine covers. We're seeing Matter Studio in Auckland, which is a photography studio, use generative AI to effectively create a global design studio where literally you just imagine the background or the setting of that particular photo. So it's changing the value perception. As a marketer, we still need to assign a value to that brand work, the content that's produced. And so maybe that's got to change from being the time it takes to produce it to the idea. And the idea and the story that tells is a lot harder for AI to produce. That's where you need the contextualization and the humans there to be able to build those narratives. Designing and executing on that content production certainly can be automated a lot quicker.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of the garbage in, garbage out scenario, and the fact is if there's not a creative individual driving the tooling, then actually the output is generally subpar. Maybe it's a scenario where the creative just gets so much better, purely, but it's the speed to market is so much better. And look, I'm all for great creative. I love great creative. When we built the SupaHuman brand, we didn't build it ourselves. Our agency used AI to build the underlying brand fabric, which we're like, cool, fine. We get a lot more value for money by doing that. But again, if you look back, any point in history, new technology has resulted in a shift in jobs and labour markets. It's rarely ended a whole labour market. And
it's a redistribution.
It's a redistribution, and I don't necessarily in this podcast want to touch on that point because I feel like a lot of content in the market is the clickbait and the headline is AI is going to take all of our jobs, and I think that our audience are interested in that topic, but they also don't want to hear a regurgitation from us of stuff that they can kind of already read. Who's getting this right in your view? Like I know you're running the traps around a lot of businesses supporting their strategy about how to think of use cases of AI. What are you seeing as common? What does good look like from where you're at right now in February of 2024?
the companies that are getting it right are the ones with senior leadership who are making AI a strategic priority. They don't necessarily know where or how it's going to impact their business, but they're making a concerted effort to engage with different partners to figure it out, to engage the people in their business who are naturally curious about how AI works, to help them understand or identify what the use cases are. What are the processes that we can automate? How will that impact our people? And thinking about how we're building skills and capability and the technology to make that happen. So that's the first thing, is that making it a strategic priority. Understanding the data within their business, and I think the word data is shifting for me. It's shifting from being a CRM, an actual data set of a list of things, to being content. It might be a folder of proposals or travel itineraries or all sorts of different things which are multifaceted data. So there is, a conscious effort around making sure that we're looking after that right. And then I guess on the other side of it, from a vendor perspective, or there's some really great companies in New Zealand that are building solutions and tech, so we don't have to look offshore for some of these solutions. And so bringing it closer to home and making that AI for business story super relevant for people across the regions is being accelerated because we've got amazing people designing and building AI tech here. And so we're building this incredible industry around artificial intelligence in New Zealand, which is helping it. So companies like what you guys are doing, what Asa Cox at Arcanum are doing, Element X, Rush Digital, there's so many companies that are building capability here, which will just continually accelerate and build category.
Historically, when the country and the businesses in New Zealand undergo their last technical transformation, which was, if you remember, like the 2017, 2018 timeline, it was all about digital transformation. We need to move from on-prem to the cloud. We need to digitize our applications. We need to move to serverless, all that kind of stuff. There was a sense of engineering and IT sometimes getting in the way of that because they loved on-prem, or they really liked managing data centers and stuff, and almost being cloud, anti-cloud. Do you get a sense of anti-AI from IT and organizations that are making it really difficult for leadership to progress down this road?
No, not necessarily. I think there's a lack of knowledge in some parts, which creates a sense of anxiety or unsureness around data or IP and security and how these things work. And so that's one of the reasons we exist, is to help build the layer of AI fundamental knowledge and the backbone of that, how these things work. But I don't necessarily see that there's that the IT or the tech teams are holding back some of this. I think that there's more of a case of some leadership teams going, no one can use ChatGPT, because they just have this there's just this gap in their knowledge around, what happens if people expose our data, and can it be used to train the algorithms, and what happens if someone searches for our company name and all this information appears, which of course doesn't happen.
I think early days experimental large language models, public large language models, were in that mode. I mean, Google openly said that Bard is an experiment, and we are likely going to use your data to train on. That was a flash in the pan for about 6 months, and all of a sudden OpenAI have got every accreditation under the sun. The tide is rising very quickly.
And it was the same when everyone was being told to move to the cloud. It's like, well, hang on a sec. If I'm moving to a cloud server, who's going to have access to that? Does that mean that all of a sudden Google's going to be reading our spreadsheets and all of our documents and those sorts of things?
And now it's ubiquitous.
And now it's ubiquitous, right? And so we've got similar challenges with AI as we did with cloud transformation, where some companies instantly see the benefit. They've got smart people who can identify the use cases. They can instantly see how it's going to streamline their business operations, reduce costs, add immense value. And then there's others which just like, we're good, we'll just keep doing things the same as we've always done. And those are the companies that are at risk from someone else coming in and going, hey, we can beat these guys very quickly and easy with an AI-powered tool, right?
Yeah.
So
it's interesting to talk about risk because you're 100% right. There's a risk to current business models that businesses get disintermediated on the current way they generate cash. There's also AI native organizations that are just popping up out of thin air that are reimagining what it means to be in a certain sector. And I mean, I don't necessarily like using the adage of Uber and blockbusters and all that kind of jazz. It's just been worn out to death. But it's happening again. You can see it.
Sam Altman comes out and says, we're on the verge of seeing a 10-person billion-dollar company. It's then plausible to imagine in a year or a short amount of time that we have a 1-person billion-dollar company. Yep. And when you have generative AI that can, write its own code, that can do its own testing, can do all of these different types of things that we've previously need lots of different people to do, or you've got, new platforms emerging which allow us to integrate seamlessly with multiple AIs to trigger workflows and tasks and do all sorts of different things. It's entirely plausible that these things are inevitable.
Let's touch on the big players for a minute. We've mentioned AWS, we've mentioned Google, we've mentioned OpenAI, Microsoft. Walk me through how you think things are going to look in the next 18 to 24 months around the big cloud players.
Where's my crystal ball?
I mean,
look, I think honestly, I think it's going to be a continual leapfrog, jump. It's the purchasing the computer. I mean, we've just seen Meta and Mark Zuckerberg announce the amount of new supercomputer processors that they're buying, right? So there's this race for compute power. There's a race for machine learning optimization and even shrinking those models down into being able to run on the edge and do things smaller, faster, cheaper. I think there's just going to be a constant battle for features, for speed, for capability, for accuracy. It's just going to keep going. It is a race at the top to get better and better and better. And I think that race is starting to flow through into larger enterprise and mid-market, knowing that they need to be utilizing these tools and building models, because the earlier the start, the quicker you start leveraging the benefits, and it makes it harder for others to catch up, right? So, the other question is, are we going to see a new emerging technology player in there that might start, challenging some of those big players? Would be, really interesting. I mean, we're starting to see Hugging Face and platforms like that start to take shape, which I don't know a huge amount about, but certainly gaining a lot of traction in the market. I mean, even 11 Labs doing voice translation is a unicorn now, valued at $1 billion. Like, that's incredible, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's going to have the latest and greatest, and the money's there. I mean, the balance sheets of these big guys are just tremendous, and they can buy their way into a market position, no doubt. And when they don't like their competition, they're likely to acquire, which is great. And I think what Microsoft did with OpenAI, albeit over the last 6 months, it's been a pretty wild ride for CEO position and a resignation and all that.
Do you think OpenAI will exist in 18 months?
I mean, look, there's big, deep pockets at Microsoft, 100%. I think the core culture of OpenAI and what it was when it was set up back in the day with Elon and the rest of the team, I think is probably still quite strong. And you can see the following that the leadership team have got with Sam. And even when he decided to move on or got moved on or whatever happened behind closed doors, you saw 700 people resign within 24 hours or whatever it was.
Someone's going to make a movie of that, right?
Someone's going to absolutely make a movie. And of course, culture changes over time, and it may be a case of with Microsoft's involvement and more members of their team being on the board now, you may see a slight change in that over time. but there's going to be some big checks need to be written to buy that organization, I would have thought. I think they're valued at close to 90 billion now. Microsoft can afford it, no doubt. And I think they bought Activision for like 40 billion last year. So they've got the money to do it 100%. It's just a case of do the leadership team and the majority stakeholders there think they can get there faster without Microsoft's involvement? And the fact that they're leaning on them for the compute right now, and they're the biggest customer of OpenAI, leads me to go, you know what? I'd be turning around saying, just give us another 5 years, guys. You know, and we're pulling a half a trillion organization out of this. It possibly may not even be money driven. I kind of laugh at myself when I say that, because pretty much most things are financially driven.
But there is a very clear research objective
Yep.
From Sam and the team
Yep.
that's tied into OpenAI
Yep.
as well. It's not just about building, consumer grade functionality.
No.
I mean, the news that we've heard this week that they're building a new platform for AI agents, which are effectively, custom GPTs, maybe an advancement on custom GPTs that can navigate the web, click buttons, complete forms, do advanced, workflow. That's the type of thing which we can, people have been predicting would be coming out this year, where teams or individuals have now got, tens or hundreds of these AI agents or little bots running around doing things for them, which I think is a really interesting thought.
Given enough like engineering capability, and I don't mean engineering from deep writing of code and engineering these models, but the ability to string complex workflows together, to pull different component solutions together to execute complex workflows. It's been around it's not new.
No, it's not.
From a Microsoft perspective, like when you take a large language model and then put it into the Power Platform, you've got access to huge amounts of data, CRM, ERP, full, clean, common data sets. You can get there quite quickly. The blocker is like us guys. I mean, not me and you specifically, because we're the ones that help trying to accelerate this stuff. But like, at what point is that technology simple enough and controlled enough and understood enough to go, you know what? I'm happy to outsource my marketing to an agent. And that's I'm very comfortable with it, but I live and breathe this stuff. It's a case of how far when is the human psychology ready to go? You know what? I'm just ready for this thing to.
Yeah, but then that's the difference with having large language models and generative AI, where we're now able to interact with those systems using natural language instead of having to be, a highly skilled, trained practitioner of Power BI and how to use those different tools. Like there's a learning curve to make those things work really, really well. And so now with these new things, we're literally having a conversation. If you can think about, there's hundreds of thousands of kids playing in Roblox, literally just typing in, change the color of the car to red, make it rain, float the car, do all these different, like the whole way we imagine around interacting with machines is changing from being, writing code and typing to using voice and gesture.
And I imagine that there's going to be a significant relinquishing of control around personal data in a negative and positive way. So for an AI agent to work for me, it needs to know access to my bank accounts, it needs to know my ID number, it needs to know all my personal life, all my Facebook logins, not only Facebook, LinkedIn logins.
Everything. How many Facebook accounts do you have?
Just, none actually. I think I've kind of jumped off Facebook. I'm too old for Facebook. But, it's got to have this underlying knowledge that says, well, okay, for me to operate as you, I need to be you.
So what does that look like? Do we want to go down that journey a little bit? What does that look like? I imagine that there's a personal API. So whether it's on a device, let's say I'm an Apple user on my iPhone, it's got already got all my passwords and login. It knows everything about how I want to access services around the internet. That could be turned into an API allowing for automation, and I can set the criteria. So what is the security protocols that I want to have around my API? And if a company, if a retailer doesn't meet those security requirements, then I don't trade with them. I don't share my particular data with them. And so you have that granular control around what information am I happy to share with that? And it's automatically, provisioned based on, I don't know, thumbprint or, facial recognition
Interesting
or
you
whatever.
mentioned that, because there's businesses that maybe if you looked at them 5 years ago that would have relatively, I say low value, but less strategic value than some. So SaaS businesses over the last 5 to 10 years have been super lucrative, high levels of ARR, big valuations. That's what VCs like. And then right now you're going, well, hang on a minute. The reality of what happened was those on the data that weren't really doing anything sexy with it are now holding the power cards. So the likes of, say, LastPass or Dashlane, the ones that own all the password chains, like, okay, you can now see how that becomes a very, very lucrative business to own when you own the underlying identity of an individual. When I say identities, because it's multiple. But without that, you don't get anywhere. And Microsoft would claim, well, Azure AD or whatever it's called these days is the most common identity platform for business. Ubiquitous AI is not going to be in business. It's going to be across the 8 billion people that are just living. And that genuinely means KeyPass on your Mac or LastPass on the web or Dashlane or whatever
Absolutely.
it is you're using. I mean, those guys must be just rubbing their hand going, well, we own the keys to the kingdom for agents here. So we talked a little bit about people's relationship with artificial intelligence, and we spoke a lot about generative and agents. What do you think we're going to be like in 5 years' time with our relationship with AI? And I'm kind of touching on that in terms of the dark side of this as well as the good stuff.
I think it will be ubiquitous through everything that we do. There is going to be constant pushback around the use of data, and I think there's also, as a society, a greater level of understanding of how these things work. And so we have to innovate at the speed of trust. And I know that it's a phrase used a lot, but it's incredibly important. And so those companies that are pushing the boundaries with the use of different AI tools have to build trust. And so they have to work with the regulatory bodies to provide a level of validation or authority around that. But I mean, even with the likes of facial recognition, I mean, the cat's been out of the bag with that for a long time. It's putting it in supermarkets is nothing new. We've had facial recognition around every major city in the world with cameras for an awful long time. So it's kind of for many of us it's kind of a natural progression, but it is a stepping stone to what next and how else might that be utilised down the track. So I think there's a lot of people smarter than me that will be thinking around what are the guardrails. We have guardrails in our business use of AI. What are the guardrails that we need to be having in society? But I mean, I honestly, even with all of that, I just think it's the rate of change is just going to be exponential. It's going to become infused into everything that we do. We're going to, just like a smartphone, we're going to look back in 5 years' time and wonder how we did anything.
Yeah. I mean, with the invention of the internet and email, we saw the creation of the dark web, and then with email, we saw spam and spam attacks and spoofing, etc., and phishing attacks. There is people don't like to dwell on it too often, but I think it's important that we kind of bring it to the floor. If there is a dark side to leveraging these technologies.
And I think that's part of the work and the responsibility that I have in sharing knowledge and expertise around artificial intelligence. And we're out doing a lunch and learn or a keynote. It's about showcasing the AI for good and the practical applications of these tools, but also helping people see how you could use it for exactly the same purpose and use it as a bad actor and what that means. And so we have to have a greater understanding of how artificial intelligence works and how we use guardrails or how we create content or how we should be doing things in a slightly different way to protect ourselves from other things happening. So that will continue to develop and evolve until those protectionisms become built in to some of these systems or or not. But we're always going to have bad actors that are using tech to manipulate it for self-serve.
That's
and
right.
those
That's
sorts of
life.
things. It's just
there's the good, there's the
you
bad.
know, life will go on. It's okay. You know,
Yeah, no,
like,
100%.
We'll be fine.
I hear you. So before we wrap up, we've just signed a partner agreement with New Zealand AI, which is great. SupaHuman New Zealand AI. Super exciting. Do you want to touch on that for a little bit and the work we're doing together?
Yeah. So look, I mean, New Zealand AI was founded to help inform, inspire, and accelerate AI for business adoption across New Zealand. We run workshops and advisory services to help companies identify the use cases. So what are the high impact use cases that they can use to boost productivity, drive innovation, create new competitive advantage? And so once we identify those use cases, we then need to provide access and unlock the entire capability around New Zealand, the skill set and the tools and the expertise to help design, build, and implement those systems. So partnering with you and the team at SupaHuman is a natural progression. It's an accelerator for that. You've got immense capability and experience building these tools, solving these business problems, solving these challenges. And for us, it's about, altogether better, how are we actually helping New Zealand become more competitive on the world stage, helping those companies build sustainable career paths, build sustainable business models, and utilize artificial intelligence at the heart of that operation to help them, scale.
Well said. That was said. And we're enjoying the partnership, and we're doing some really good business together. It's great to have our engineering team flex their muscle against the use cases that you're bringing to the table. So thank you for you and the partnership. And the partnership is expanding because of the relationship we've got, but also you're expanding the team as well. Do you want to walk through your growth plans and where you're at with growing the team?
Yeah, so our ambition is to become an MSP for AI in New Zealand. On one hand, we're helping with the education and the adoption. We have capability to build AI apps and AI agents and different things, but we're not really in the build game. We want to grow category, and we want to be lead gen and provide independent, agnostic advice and trusted advice into the New Zealand business market, so that we're putting the right people and the right solutions to solve those particular problems. So yeah, we're growing. We've just brought on Andrew Mosley, who's our new director of partnerships, who's got extensive career and experience working in the tech services space, and so he's going to be helping to scale up that partnership program, helping to work with our partners to create new events, to create content, to elevate the conversation at a national level around why we should be, why AI is so important, and building that urgency around adoption. So yeah, it's a really exciting time. We're incredibly busy. There's a huge amount of opportunity to help grow New Zealand companies, and that's what gets me excited. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning, is having these conversations with business leaders and learning about their business, and how do we help them scale? How do we make them more effective and productive and more effective? How do we help build job satisfaction and a sense of purpose in their business, where their people can do what they do best, and we let the robots do what they do best.
Justin, we've gone down some good avenues of investigation. Thank you for your time. Yeah, real good. I mean, we could carry on for hours, but people have got day jobs. And what I'd say is, over the course of the next year, let's get this going again. We'll pick some meaty topics and make sure we're giving the audience exactly what they need, which is education and enablement for this kind of stuff. It's not just about the tech; it's about how we impact people. But
absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for joining us on the podcast, and I'll see you out there on the coalface.
You will.
Cool.
Well done.
Thanks.